Imagine you are sitting in the lead armored vehicle of the Russian forces, heading straight into what seems like a vulnerable gap between Ukrainian brigades. The roar of the engines and the clear road ahead leave the command crew convinced that today is the day they will breach the defensive line. The 3-0 vehicle convoy rumbles forward like a pack of steel beasts. However, they are completely unaware that they are plunging straight into the gaping jaws of death. Ukraine's kill zone is now a deadly operating system, stretching 25 kilometers, interwoven with a reconnaissance network, stealth mines, and swarms of FPV drones. The result is a mathematical brutality. 24 out of 30 vehicles are obliterated in just 100 minutes. Let us dissect the kill chain that turned all the efforts of the Russian forces into a bloody numerical error. The silence in the sky over the steppe is a deadly lie. Above the thick clouds of dust churned up by the Russian armored convoy, Ukraine's eyes had been operating silently for hours beforehand. This battle does not begin with the shriek of artillery shells, but rather with digital sensors. The tiny Mavic reconnaissance drones, virtually invisible at altitudes of hundreds of meters, hover with the patience of wild beasts. They are not just observing, they are digitizing the entire battlefield. Every intersection, every mound of dirt, every potential hiding position is thermal mapped and marked with coordinates with a margin of error measured only in meters. To the Russian commanders, this is a march to capture an objective, but to the Ukrainian operator teams, it is merely a sequence of push notifications popping up on tablet screens in real time. Every TOR short-range anti-aircraft vehicle attempting to sweep its radar for targets, every ammunition truck trailing behind in line, has been tagged with a digital death label. But reconnaissance is merely the first layer of the trap. As the Russian convoy begins to enter the theoretical firing range, the setup phase, the setup transitions into a physical yet absolutely stealthy form, remote mine laying. This is an outstanding evolution of modern engineering techniques, where soldiers no longer have to crawl in the dark with shovels and pickaxes. Instead, Ukraine deploys heavy-lift quadcopters and unmanned ground vehicles, UGVs, moving stealthily in the night or under the tree canopy. They carry out a surgical mission, sowing PTM-1 and TM-62 anti-tank mines directly onto alternative routes and escape ditches. The cunning aspect here is that Ukraine does not lay mines blatantly on the main road axis, where Russian mine-clearing vehicles could detect and neutralize them. They lay mines in the escape corridors, places where, instinctively, a tank driver will swerve into when unexpectedly attacked to seek the cover of the terrain. The tactical mindset behind this network is a ruthless geometric problem of spatial shaping. Ukraine does not want to blow up the Russian forces immediately at the outermost boundary. Their goal is to turn the entire area into an invisible cage. By sowing mines on both flanks and at turning points, Ukraine has framed the route of the Russian forces, stripping away the enemy's power of choice. Every meter of road the Russian tanks advance is a meter they delve deeper into the pre-calculated zone of fire. While the Russian troops are still eager with the intention of breaking through, they have, in reality, been stripped of their mobility even before the first shot rings out. Any effort to turn left or reverse to evade when falling into the ambush later on will only lead them to a single outcome: explosions tearing through the undercarriage from the stealth mines that were laid down just 5 minutes prior. This is how Ukraine herds its prey, forcing the Russian troops to march exactly according to the script they have pre-written in the command bunker, where death is no longer a matter of chance, but a precise mechanical arrangement. As the lead Russian tank slowly crested a small slope, the stealth trap officially snapped shut with utmost ruthlessness. There was no roar of artillery from afar, only the ear-piercing shriek of high RPM electric motors tearing through the air. An FPV first-person view drone swooped down like an armored falcon, aiming straight for the gap between the turret and the hull of the lead vehicle. A sudden explosion tore through the tank's tracks, turning the nearly 50-ton block of steel into a motionless obstacle right in the middle of the only road. Almost immediately, a second FPV drone slammed into the armored vehicle at the rear of the formation. This pinning the head and tail strike was no accident. It was a military doctrine executed by Ukrainian operator teams aimed at turning the entire Russian motorized convoy into a congested strip of scrap metal, trapped in a narrow space with no way out. The true nightmare began when the silence of the sky was replaced by the shrieks of the FPV swarm. Ukraine did not launch them one by one. They unleashed deadly swarms of bees from thickets and underground bunkers a few kilometers away. Dozens of drone operator teams continuously took turns launching sorties. Camera footage transmitted back revealed a scene of utter chaos. Russian soldiers frantically leaped from burning vehicles, only to quickly realize that the ground was no safer. The tiny FPV drones, carrying shaped charge or anti-personnel warheads, hovered overhead with a terrifying patience. They were in no rush. The Ukrainian operators calmly selected their targets, prioritizing vehicles still capable of moving or command groups attempting to reorganize the formation. Every 30 seconds, another explosion rang out, accompanied by thick columns of black smoke billowing from the million-dollar war machines. In a panic, the Russian forces began deploying traditional defensive measures, but all proved utterly useless against this new technology of war. Thick smoke screens were deployed to blind the enemy, but the silhouettes of the turrets and, crucially, the blazing thermal signatures of the Russian tank engines had already been locked onto by the infrared sensors of the Ukrainian drones. The smoke merely blinded the Russian forces further, while the Ukrainian drones could still see right through the haze using modern image processing algorithms. Russian tanks attempted to swerve left to evade, but exactly as calculated, they immediately rolled over the network of TM-62 mines that Ukraine had pre-laid in the ditches. An explosion from beneath the undercarriage hurled the turret into the air. Here, tactical geometry had become ruthless. Rapid movement, the very core of armored breakthrough doctrine, was now the fastest way for the Russian forces to find the stealth mines. The battlefield morale of the Russian troops was completely broken under the crushing weight of their own helplessness. Watching their comrades being hunted down by devices costing a mere few $100s, the remaining Russian crews fell into a state of paralyzing fear. They could not return fire at targets as tiny and highly maneuverable as drones using their main guns or heavy machine guns. Every time a Russian soldier attempted to raise their head, they heard the deadly buzzing of an FPV drone hovering, searching for an opening. There were no miracles here, only a cold reality. The brute force of heavy tanks had been utterly subdued by Ukraine's network of artificial intelligence and cheap drones. The futility of their outdated tactics exposed a fatal flaw. In the era of drone swarms, concentrating a large convoy without a sufficiently robust accompanying electronic warfare, EW system is nothing short of mass suicide. The Russian convoy was no longer a fighting unit, but merely a line of static targets waiting their turn to be wiped off the Ukrainian operators' list. If the FPV drone swarms can be likened to intricate surgical scalpels paralyzing the nervous system of the Russian convoy, then Ukrainian artillery and missiles are the sledgehammer crashing down to shatter any final hope of survival. Once the Russian armored vehicles have been clustered and locked down on the Seoul road by mines and drones, another scenario of destruction is triggered from artillery positions tens of kilometers away. Ukrainian commanders do not rush to unleash their firepower right from the start. They wait until the target density reaches the ideal saturation point, the moment when the Russian troops are at their most panicked and the vehicles are most severely congested. This is when battlefield mathematics replaces compassion. The roaring shrieks of self-propelled artillery and 155mm howitzers ring out in unison, pouring a rain of cluster munitions directly into the epicenter of the chaotic mass of solid steel. The submunitions ejecting from the carrier shells blanket the ground with thousands of tiny but devastatingly powerful explosions, piercing the fragile roof armor of the armored vehicles and turning scattered Russian infantrymen into targets with nowhere to hide. The brutality does not stop at the front line. While the leading tanks are being dismantled, Ukraine's integrated kill chain system has already extended its octopus tentacles deep into the Russian rear echelons. This is when long-range gods of war like HIMARS make their voices heard. Ukrainian drone operators at the front continuously transmit coordinate data back to the command center in real time via the Starlink system. Every Russian air defense system, such as the Tor or Panzer, the moment it switches on its radar in an attempt to intercept the drone swarms circling overhead, immediately becomes a blazing bright spot on the electronic warfare map. Mere seconds later, a GPS-guided GMLRS rocket from behind the Ukrainian front lines will plunge down at supersonic speed, completely obliterating the tens of millions of dollars worth of air defense systems before the crew can even comprehend what is happening. Resupply ammunition trucks or refueling vehicles hiding behind tree lines 2 kilometers away are no exception either. Ukraine is not merely destroying what is attacking them, they are severing every blood vessel that nourishes that attack. Behind the sky-illuminating explosions lies a dark mathematical calculus, dark math, that reflects the true nature of modern warfare. The effectiveness of this multi-layered defense system has reached astonishing levels, capable of eliminating up to 88% of the Russian attacking force before a single one of their soldiers can even lay a hand on the rim of the first defensive trench. This is no longer a war of individual bravery, but a war of data processing efficiency. In key areas like Kupiansk, Ukraine has erected a drone wall with a tactical depth of up to 25 kilometers. Within this space, every motorized movement of the Russian forces is treated as a bloody mathematical error. The concept of a safe rear area has completely vanished. A Russian tank moving 15 kilometers away from its starting point is already in the crosshairs. At 10 kilometers, it is attacked by suicide drones, and the final 5 kilometers is merely the execution process of a predetermined sentence. It is exactly this absolute deadlock and profound despair that has led to scenes unprecedented in modern military history. The combat morale of the Russian forces has been crushed to the extent that soldiers, rather than seeking ways to fight, have chosen to surrender to a drone. In the darkness of the kill zone, when the roar of tanks is gone and only the buzzing of electric motors remains, Russian soldiers understand that resistance is futile. Videos capturing Russian soldiers dropping their weapons, raising their hands in surrender, and trudging along under the guidance of a tiny drone toward Ukrainian trenches have become symbolic of technology's dominance on the battlefield. They would rather trust in the mercy of a soulless machine than face the inevitable rain of firepower from pre-programmed coordinates. The battlefield no longer has room for heroic, old-school motorized breakthroughs. It has become an automated meat grinder, where every effort to advance is shattered by the ruthless combination of all-seeing reconnaissance eyes, precise mathematics, and unstoppable firepower.
Пришла такая информация о том, что
за легенду.